I love the talk.
Mr. Reagan.
So most people know what happened with Piers Morgan criticizing Meghan Markle. Now, I covered this on my other channel, Toxic Masculinity. Please subscribe to that if you haven't already. The link is in the description below. But if you haven't heard, Piers Morgan was essentially canceled. He had to quit his show. They say that he quit, but I'm pretty sure he was pushed out of his show. I think it's called Good Morning Britain, because he dared criticize Meghan Markle, who is beloved, I think essentially just because she's black and she's a member of the royal family. I think that's really her only qualifications for being so beloved by so many people. But she's also really hated by a lot of people. I mean, she's a very divisive person because let's face it, she's kind of a spoiled brat. In the way she acts, she's one of the most entitled people in the world, and yet she still complains about being a victim, of racism, of all kinds of unfairness. She's just weirdly childlike. I mean, she's infantile in her complaints about the world and her life and everything. It's like, you're a princess. Suck it up and get over it. You're good. Your life is set. There are people out there who don't know where their next meal's coming from. You've got to figure out whether you want the pink room or the blue room in your palace. You're fine. But she still finds room to complain, and people just aren't that sympathetic to her, including Piers Morgan. So Piers Morgan, the real controversy was after Meghan Markle said that she was suicidal when she was living with the royal family. Piers Morgan said, I don't believe her. I don't believe that she was suicidal. I don't believe a thing that she says. Now, maybe that was insensitive. Maybe that was something that people who deal with, mental health and people who are suicidal, that might hurt them, that might offend them, that might bother them. Okay, but it is possible that she was lying. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibilities. Why is it that you're not allowed to ever say that you think that somebody's lying if they say something dramatic about their lives, like I felt suicidal, or I was depressed, or something like that? People lie about that kind of stuff all the time. People know that they get sympathy if they say something like I was depressed, or I was suicidal, or something, stuff like that. If people acknowledge some kind of weakness or frailty, it often results in a great deal of sympathy pouring out at them. And so some people will abuse this, and they'll say things that aren't true in order to get that sympathy pouring in, right? Piers Morgan didn't believe her. He thought she was lying. Okay, that's fine. That's his opinion. People might be offended by it. People might not like it. But there's nothing inherently evil or bad about that. That's just his perception, right? He's been very critical of Meghan Markle in the past. Clearly, she's somebody that he thinks is duplicitous, is deceptive, and can't be trusted. Okay. Now, is that a reason for him to get fired from his show or be forced to resign? No, I don't think anybody thinks so. I think everybody thinks that's pretty unfair. Only the most irrational person, or maybe somebody who really hates Piers Morgan, would suggest that Piers Morgan shouldn't have a job because he said he didn't believe Meghan Markle. I mean, who the hell cares about Meghan Markle? I mean, I guess, so the problem is too many people care about Meghan Markle. She's somebody nobody should be thinking about ever, and yet it seems like tons of people are thinking about her all the time. It's weird. Anyway, I think that, based on some of the stuff I've been watching with this talk business, I think it kind of boils down to the fact that she's like a black girl who made good, right? This comes down to something that's a cultural difference between black people and white people that I've mentioned before on the show, that it's something that I've recognized. And, if you're black and you watch the show and you think I'm wrong, please write that in the comments. This is merely my perception. But it seems to me that that there are very few, if any, white people who gain a sense of value by the accomplishments of other white people, right? I don't think anybody goes, ooh, Elon Musk is a billionaire and he was really successful. He designed this electric car that's very successful, and he's done a great job for himself. Therefore, I'm now awesome. But in the black community, it seems to be a little bit different. If somebody is successful and they're black people seem to think that it reflects on them positively. Like, oh, this is the first black astronaut. Therefore, we're all the first black astronaut. We're all astronauts now. We've all accomplished this thing. And it's just like, no, you haven't. just because one black person does something awesome, that doesn't really affect you. You shouldn't really care that much. But there is this kind of sense of that. And I don't know if that's a cultural issue, or I don't know if that's something that like leftist, like liberal white people have taught black people to think that way, or I'm not really sure how that happened. But there does seem to be this distinction. Black culture seems to pride itself on the accomplishments of black people. White people do not tend to pride themselves on the accomplishment of other white people. Like Barack Obama. Barack Obama, for many black people, seemed to be a symbol of success of black people. And I don't know, it's just a different mindset. So when Meghan Markle married one of the princes of, one of the most famous and respected royal families in the world, I think a lot of black people thought, oh, this is great. She's made it. She's made it into this, the upper echelons of white society. Good for her. And there's a sense among some black people, like, we have to defend her to the death. Anything that anybody says bad about her, well, that's just horrible, and we have to fight it. And what that's kind of turned into is this idea that if you criticize Meghan Markle in any way whatsoever, you're a racist, right? And that's not just something that black people say. That's something that's being said by a lot of white people, especially like in the British media. But here's the thing. Sharon Osbourne did not criticize Meghan Markle. Sharon Osbourne basically said that she thought that what Piers Morgan said was okay, and that he should have the right to say he doesn't believe Meghan Markle, which is like not even remotely controversial. That's obvious, right? It's not even a First Amendment thing. It's just a common sense thing. A person doesn't have to believe somebody else, and if they don't believe somebody else, and that person happens to be black, that doesn't make them a racist. It's like, should we just are we now pretending that no black person has ever lied in the history of the world? Is that what we're saying? Like, Meghan Markle's black, therefore everything that she says must be taken at face value and never questioned? It's ridiculous. So we are now looking at Sharon Osbourne being canceled, potentially, being kicked off her show, because she said that she thinks that Piers Morgan, who is a friend of hers, deserves to speak his mind. And a lot of conservatives are saying, well, she's a proponent of cancel culture. She's part of the problem. She's part of Hollywood. And therefore, this is ironic that it's now coming back at her. But I did some digging. And I don't think that she is a proponent of cancel culture. I don't think she is part of the problem. I don't think she is part of the Hollywood elite, a-hole system that goes after people. In fact, I think she might be a conservative. We'll get into all that in one moment. First, of course, I have to sell you something. The data of 2.3 million users has been leaked after a hacker managed to find a backdoor into the popular dating site Meet Mindful. Leaked personal data included names, Facebook IDs, emails, birthdays, location data, and more. The data was then uploaded to a public hacking forum for anyone to download. Meet Mindful says that they have since patched the flaw, but the damage is already done. If you want to prevent attacks like this from happening to you, I highly recommend Virtual Shield. Virtual Shield is the only VPN that I will ever use because they have a strict no-log policy built into their software from the ground up for privacy protection. Go to virtualshield.com/Mr. Reagan to get Virtual Shield for 50% off today, or click on the link in the description below. Okay, so I made a kind of bizarre assertion that Sharon Osbourne might be a conservative. Now, I don't necessarily think she's a conservative in the sense that she is like an old-fashioned, traditional values Christian conservative. But I do think she might be what you would call a conservative in the political sense in Britain, right? And you got to understand that the Conservative Party in Britain, they used to be known as the Tories, they're not particularly conservative as we think of conservatives here in the United States. They're more like maybe what Democrats used to be like in the 1990s, with some more conservative values, right? So they're a little bit more conservative than I would say the Democrats were in the 1990s in America. But here's the thing. So I looked into Sharon Osbourne's politics, Ozzy Osbourne's politics. He's against the Second Amendment. Ozzy Osbourne has criticized gun rights in America. He has criticized George W. Bush and the Iraq War. They both criticize the Iraq War because they're both very anti-war. But there are a lot of anti-war conservatives. So I think that Sharon Osbourne is something like a libertarian, right? She's something like what we would consider libertarian in America, but what is probably more like a conservative in the UK. She's a very sort of pragmatic person. She says what she thinks, and she's very provocative. And I'll be honest, I like all of those things. So I like Sharon Osbourne. And I hate that she's being attacked like this. Another reason why I think maybe she's a conservative or a libertarian or something like that is because you really can't find anything overtly political that she's said. And she's been on television a lot, and I couldn't really find much that she's said that's overtly political. So I think she kind of hides it. And anytime somebody in Hollywood is hiding their political views, it's a good indication that they're probably a libertarian or a conservative. Now, of course, I could be wrong, right? They had the TV show on MTV years ago called The Osbournes, and we saw them saying a lot of very vulgar things to each other. The whole family swears like pirates, screaming and swearing at each other all the time. But you know what? At the end of the day, they seem to still love each other a great deal, and they seem to actually hold some conservative values at least, some traditional family values at least, despite the swearing, right? So they seem to have a sort of veneer of leftism or vulgarity or atheism in some way, but they seem to have a decent heart. Everyone in that family seems to have somewhat of a decent heart. And so I like the Osbournes, actually. I never listened to Black Sabbath. I'm not like a huge fan of Ozzy Osbourne or any of that stuff. But I like them. I like the whole family. And I especially like Sharon Osbourne. I think I like the provocative nature of how she speaks and what she says. So without further ado, let us actually watch the footage, the episode of The Talk, and let's see what the ladies of The Talk have to say.
I just wanted to let everyone that watches our show know that because I supported my friend with his freedom of speech and his opinions, I know he has a right to say what he feels on the interview, as we have a right to say, and everybody has a right to say what they feel with freedom of speech. Did I like everything he said? Did I agree with what he said? No. Because it's his opinion, it's not my opinion. But everybody goes, if you support him, then you must be racist because he's racist. I support him for his freedom of speech and he's my friend. I'm not racist, neither is Piers racist, and I hate the fact of even saying I'm not racist. What have I ever said about anybody that is racist? It's not within me. It's not within me, who I am. It's not in my soul. I don't care what color or what religion anyone is. Are you a nice person? That's what I judge you on. Are you respectful and nice to me? Then I return it. I don't care anybody's religion or race. It has nothing to do with being a good person, but I'm the last person in the world who's racist.
See, now this is actually a little bit of a problem for her, because this is precisely how conservatives perceive people based on the color of their skin. We have really taken to heart this idea that you do not judge a person by the by the color of their skin, but rather you judge them by the content of their character. You see them as an individual as opposed to part of a group, right? This is true of every single conservative I know. It's true of me. It's true of my family. It's true of everybody I know that is a conservative. But the left has actually transcended this, what I would call rational perception of the world, rational philosophical position to hold on race. They've transcended this into lunacy, where now it's no longer good enough to say, I don't really care what color skin you have. Now you have to say, if you're one of these radical leftists, you have to say, I do recognize that somebody is black, I do recognize that somebody is white, and I do judge them by the color of their skin. Now if you're white, I recognize that you're inferior, you are guilty of being a racist, and you have to ask for forgiveness, and you have to apologize for that, and you have to try to be better. And that's a perpetual thing. You will perpetually always have to be better because you are perpetually going to be a racist. You're a bad person. If you are black, on the other hand, then you're part of the good side. You are one of the good people. You are one of the better people. You are superior. You are better in every single way. And you and your ancestors have been victims, and therefore you deserve more. You deserve to be respected more, and you deserve everything, without necessarily working for it. Because so much has been taken from you, now we must give to you whether or not you deserve it individually, that's irrelevant because you're part of the black race and therefore you're superior, right? So that's the leftist point of view now. And so she thinks, Sharon Osbourne thinks that she's saying something good here by saying she doesn't, and I think this kind of gives it away. I think this is a mistake of hers if she's trying to hide the fact that she's a conservative in some ways, or a libertarian or something like that. This reveals, actually, to us, to a radical leftist, this reveals that she is not a radical leftist. She doesn't recognize that because she, it's so irrational to judge people on the basis of race that people like us don't actually, unless we're privy to it, unless somebody like me who just studies this stuff all the time, we're not privy to the fact that this is how the left thinks now. You wouldn't even guess it. You wouldn't even imagine that it is. And so you couldn't take measures to guard against that. But so she kind of screwed herself there by being too honest. But that's how she is. She's always honest about how she feels, and I respect that. And I like that a lot. I don't always agree with her about everything she says, but I love that she's bold enough to say what she thinks all the time. And it's finally gotten her into trouble for saying something as innocent as this guy has the freedom to say he doesn't believe somebody. But this whole thing is about to devolve into a much more irrational subject, and it's going to just get stalled there, and we're going to get into that, and it's going to be pretty enlightening. Let's see.
I've been knowing you for years since I've been here, and I've never seen anything come out of you other than, if I don't know, I'm willing to learn. If it comes off a certain way, I stand corrected.
Right.
That's the only thing I've seen.
Yeah.
So what would you say to people who may feel that while you're standing by your friend, it appears that you give validation or safe haven to something that he has uttered that is racist, even if you don't agree? Am I saying it right? Okay,
I don't know what he's uttered that's racist. I'm not trying to slide out of this one.
Right.
I don't know. Tell me, what has he uttered that's racist?
So, so she's asked the question that's really at the heart of all of this, which is Piers Morgan is being criticized for criticizing Meghan Markle, because if you criticize Meghan Markle in the eyes of some people, then you're a racist, right? Obviously, that's not true. Obviously, you can criticize somebody who's black without being a racist. But the problem is that there is this reverence to somebody like Meghan Markle because she is so successful as a black woman. And there is this idea amongst some people that if you're a successful black person, that's such an amazing accomplishment. Even though she didn't really do anything. I mean, she was a fairly successful actress. But she didn't really do anything. She just married a guy who was born into a wealthy family. She didn't really accomplish anything. And yet, this is considered a great accomplishment by some people that, she did this great thing. She married this guy, and now she's a princess, or she was a princess until she decided she didn't want to be a princess. And that's another weird thing. Like, she decided to step away from royalty, and I think that actually was a bit of a dagger in the heart of a lot of black people who were like, she's such a great role model for so many little girls who can now look at her and say, I could be a princess too. Well, now she's not a princess because she gave up the royal titles. So now she's just an ordinary girl married to a guy who was formerly a prince. I mean, a lot of people think that Meghan Markle screwed that guy over. Prince Harry screwed him over, and I think they're probably right. But anyway, it's this weird idea that, we revere this particular black person, and so they are kind of special, right? They're kind of protected. Anything that you say to them, we're going to attack you viciously. Anything you say bad about them, we're going to attack you viciously for. And the number one way that you attack somebody that you don't like who is critical of a black person is, your comments are racist. Even though comments have nothing to do with race, right? If I am friends with a black person and they paint a painting that I don't think is particularly nice, and I say I don't really like it particularly, there's nothing about race there. But somebody could somehow interpret it as being racist. I mean, that's what they tend to do. We all know this. We see it every day. But I think this is kind of the same mentality, right? So Piers Morgan is a racist. There's nothing Piers Morgan has ever said that I'm aware of that's racist at all. But because he criticized Meghan Markle, he's racist, right? And they cannot get around that. So this is the beginning of where everything just kind of stalls. To use Sharon's word, they're basically just waffling on and on and on about how they don't really have any evidence of Piers Morgan being racist, but he just is because Meghan Markle's black. Right? And he was critical of Meghan Markle. Even though Sharon Osbourne will ask in a moment, if you criticize a black person, does that make you racist? And they say no. And yet they still insist that Piers Morgan is racist for criticizing Meghan Markle because she's black and for no other reason. They don't ever provide a reason. We're going to go. It's incredibly frustrating to the point where Sharon Osbourne begins to cry. And I don't think she's crying necessarily because she's sad about being attacked. I actually think she started to cry because she's so unbelievably frustrated that she can't get to the heart of the matter, because at the heart of the matter, they're all wrong, right? They are all wrong to criticize Piers Morgan. They're wrong to criticize her for defending Piers Morgan, because nothing Piers Morgan said was bad. Nothing Piers Morgan said was racist, which is what they're trying to say. Let's keep watching, and you guys will see how ridiculous this is.
If he talks about, he doesn't want to understand that how Meghan was treated was racism, and then says, and I'm just going off the top of my head, so forgive me, audience.
Go on.
If he says, I don't see it as being racist, or what she's going, I don't believe what she's going through, or it's that white entitlement privilege that makes it racist upon itself.
All right, I think I kind of understood vaguely what she was saying. I think she's trying to say that because all of the criticism that has been levied against Meghan Markle over the years by the media was racist, which I don't think that it was either, but she's just making that assumption. So she says that because Piers Morgan didn't recognize the history of racism against Meghan Markle in the media, which never existed, and because he ignored that and said he didn't believe her, like anything that she's said, that's somehow comes out of white privilege and therefore he's a racist. I mean, this is the kind of convoluted gobbledygook that you always get from the left, right? So her idea is the media was racist to Meghan Markle, which they weren't. Piers Morgan didn't recognize that and said he didn't believe what she said, even though what she said wasn't anything about race. It was about feeling suicidal. And therefore, Piers Morgan is a racist. And also, she threw in something about white privilege in there, right? I think the white privilege thing was just sort of a distraction. You know, like magicians practice something called misdirection. Well, they'll get your attention over here while they do something, sly over here that you don't notice. I think that's kind of what she was doing. Like, let's throw in the word white privilege, and then people will just all think that everything that I just said makes sense. Like, there's all these kind of magic words on the left that you just throw out, and that because people don't really understand them, because there's no real good definition of white privilege. I mean, what is white privilege? Nobody's able to define it well. I have a couple of good definitions, I think, a couple of ideas that I think work actually relatively well. But the white privilege that I see is relatively insignificant, and it's not something that white people are culpable for. The privilege that white people have in America or anywhere isn't anything that can be helped. It's a natural consequence of the state of the world, right? But I have started to think that certain kinds of white privilege do exist. So I have sort of shifted my view on that a little bit. I used to say white privilege isn't a thing at all. I do think it's a thing. I just don't think it's a thing like black people think it's a thing, or like white liberals think it's a thing. So, but anyway, but in this case, she's not even using it in any sense that is applicable. She's just using the word to misdirect people so that they're confused and they don't understand quite what she's saying, but they just accept it as true because it kind of sounds like maybe it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. Nothing she just said makes any sense. And this is a trend that continues throughout the show.
How do you address people who say, then you are standing with racism? Not saying that you are. I'm saying for people that may be feeling that. I don't think what people are applying to you is all the way apropos, but once you say I stand by my friend, then people think, well, then you must agree with what he's saying.
And the reason is because I think in this moment, we need people to stand up for anti-racism. Like, not being racist is almost, but without being anti-racist, I think that's the thing. When people feel that he's racist, people have receipts. I wish we had them today so that we could actually go deeper into this conversation so people could see why people feel that he's racist and sexist and I mean, there's a lot, but we don't have those receipts here.
Okay, so Sharon obviously doesn't get a chance to respond here because this girl in pink kind of jumps in. Now, this to me is the funniest part of this interview. She says, the people who think Piers Morgan is a racist, they have receipts. Okay, let me explain here. This is moron speak for supporting evidence, right? The words that she's looking for are supporting evidence. That's the traditional term for what she's saying. She's calling them receipts because she's an idiot, and that's what she thinks the most appropriate word to use here is. Anyway, I actually think this is kind of like a trending thing. I've heard it a few times. People say, oh, we got receipts. We've got receipts. You mean you have supporting evidence, or evidence to support your point, maybe, is an even better term, I think. But she doesn't have any evidence to support her point. She doesn't have the receipts, right? She says, I wish we had those because then we could get into this deeper. We could establish for sure that Piers Morgan is a racist. Well, why did you not come prepared? If you guys knew this conversation was going to happen on the show, right? You guys you'd heard about the Piers Morgan thing for some time now. Your job is to talk about these hot button issues. That's your whole job, is to present your opinion on this stuff. And you didn't take the time to look into whether or not Piers Morgan was actually racist. You're just making this assumption because he criticized Meghan Markle, and therefore Piers Morgan must be a racist. He's not a racist. Piers Morgan's not a racist. Okay, I'm sorry, he's not. Your claim that you have these receipts, or that somebody has these receipts, so-called, that's just like saying, trust me, I have a mountain of evidence to support my point. Now, I don't know what that evidence is right now. I don't have it in front of me, but I can assure you I have evidence. That is the least convincing way to present any kind of an argument. Look, I know this argument sounds irrational, but trust me, I have a lot of evidence to support it. I don't have it here, but you're just going to have to believe me. It's just, the only problem with this whole encounter is that Sharon Osbourne, she doesn't have the tools to effectively fight these women off, right? She's not like Jordan Peterson. She's not like one of these more famous, well-known conservatives that can just come in and absolutely obliterate these women's arguments, right? Somebody like Norm Macdonald, who's a comedian, or Bill Burr, they could come in and as these women are saying things like this, they would just destroy them. And Sharon Osbourne is very much a kind of comedian type person, right? I mean, she's a provocateur in the same tradition as many of these comedians are, but she doesn't have that wit to be able to come back at somebody with obvious truths when she's personally being attacked. I think she can do that when it's a subject that's not affecting her emotionally, but in this particular case, she's having a little bit of trouble, and I can understand that. She's feeling attacked, she's feeling a bit traumatized, and she's having a difficulty. That's all right, but I wish I was there to take these women down, because I would just obliterate every argument they have. What really needed to happen is Sharon needed to push this point. She needed to say, look, unless you have those receipts, as you call them, unless you have supporting evidence to show that Piers Morgan is racist, your whole argument falls apart. The reason I wanted to make this video is because this is so emblematic of everything that happens in our society these days. Like, accusations are aspersions are cast, accusations are made all the time, things that just aren't true. The idea that Roseanne was racist for saying, what's her name, looked like a character from Planet of the Apes. That chick did look like a character from Planet of the Apes. Valerie Jarrett, that's her name. Okay, so if you look at a picture of Valerie Jarrett, I'll put it up on the screen here, and you put it next to a picture of one of the characters from Planet of the Apes, you'll see she does, in fact, look like a character from Planet of the Apes. Now, Roseanne was accused of being a racist because I guess Valerie Jarrett is part black or something like that. I had no idea Valerie Jarrett was black. I've seen her give presentations and speeches and talk to the media and stuff like that during the Obama administration. I never thought she was black. Roseanne said, oh, I didn't know she was black, right? Now, the Planet of the Apes, right, it's a movie about evolved apes, right? And this idea that calling a black person a monkey or saying they look like a monkey, that has somehow in our culture been equated to racism. And I know that, so I would never make that accusation, because I know that people would then immediately just accuse you of being a racist. But the truth is, lots of people look like monkeys, man. Lots of white people look like monkeys, black people, Asians. There's all kinds of people that look like monkeys. If you got your ears kind of like this, I'm sorry, you look like a little bit like a monkey. Black, white, green, whatever you are. What color, it doesn't matter. Some people have features that look monkeyish, and if you want to make a little joke about them, sometimes people will say that. And I think that probably Roseanne knew that if you called a black person a monkey or said they look like a monkey or an ape or something like that, that in fact you would be accused of racism. So I actually really think that she said that thinking she was safe because she thought Valerie Jarrett was white. Because indeed there are some white people that look like monkeys. And so I think she probably thought she was safe. And then when she found out she was part black or whatever, she's like, crap. You know? I mean, what an awful mistake to make, right? You're up in the middle of the night. She was probably a bit drunk or something. She's like, she looks like one of the characters from Planet of the Apes. And the thing is, she really does look like that character from Planet of the Apes. And it's a shame that she's part black, because if Valerie Jarrett had been totally white, Roseanne would never lose her job. That's the messed up thing about that, is that you can cast this aspersion. You can say, this person's a racist because they criticized a single black person in a very specific way, and therefore they must hate all black people and they're a horrible racist. I mean, it's just so stupid. It's just so silly. God, these stupid stories, they're just starting to annoy the hell out of me. Like, I'm so done talking about racial stuff, but like, this is the world we live in now. I mean, the racist accusation is now being used as leverage to push any idea or anything that anybody wants. If the woke mob wants somebody destroyed, they'll just say something you said was racist, and then you get destroyed, and that's it, right? Piers Morgan, he criticized this woman. She must be a racist. There's a lot of people who hate Piers Morgan. They were looking for a reason to get rid of him. Gina Carano, a lot of people who hated Gina Carano. I mean, that was an orchestrated effort. A lot of people think that Kathleen Kennedy at Star Wars actually started the Fire Gina Carano thing on Twitter. Like, that was her plan. Like, she had orchestrated that whole thing because she wanted to get rid of Gina Carano. And so she pretended that she was reacting to something that happened organically online when it was really something she started herself. Not obviously from her account, but she orchestrated it. And then she pretended to be, oh gosh, all these people want Gina Carano fired. I guess we should do it. It's like, actually you started that. you made that happen because you didn't like Gina Carano. That's a theory. I don't know if that's actually true. But, now the same thing happened to Piers Morgan, and now the same thing is happening to Sharon Osbourne just for defending Piers Morgan's freedom to say something and not assuming that he's a racist for criticizing Meghan Markle. All right, let's watch a little bit more of this train wreck.
But I think the bigger point is anti-racism is what is being called for, not just not being racist. So when we kind of give passes or give space to people who are saying damaging, harmful things, what we're kind of doing is permitting it.
Permitting it? Permissing's not a word, sister. What's really ridiculous about what this woman is saying is she's saying that, Sharon Osbourne is guilty of not being anti-racist because she's not condemning what Piers Morgan has said. She's saying that he should have the freedom to say what he wants, and she's not being anti-racist. But here's the thing. You cannot be anti-racist about things you don't think are racist, right? So, I mean, I would consider myself an anti-racist. I'm an ardent anti-racist. I do see online some conservatives, like fans of Nick Fuentes and stuff like that. I'm actually against all of that stuff from the perspective of white people and white culture. But the thing that I think differentiates me from these leftists who are quote unquote anti-racist, which they really aren't, but I won't get into that now, is that I'm also against racism against white people. And leftists don't recognize that there's any racism against white people in America or anywhere, but it's just not true. There's an insane amount of racism against white people in America, in the UK, in South Africa, all over the world. There is racism against white people today. So this idea that, black people can't be racist, I mean, absolutely ridiculous. So I think of myself as an anti-racist in a much more profound way than like a leftist would pretend to be an anti-racist. When this woman says, you're not being anti-racist for not condemning Piers Morgan, you cannot be anti-racist about something you don't think is racist. If somebody says, that grass looks really green, like it must have rained recently, and somebody says, you didn't condemn them for saying such a racist thing, and you turn to them and you go, what the hell are you talking about? They said the grass is green, it must have rained recently. How is that racist? You're giving space to racism. Piers Morgan didn't say anything racist. So how can Sharon Osbourne not be anti-racist for not condemning him for being racist when he didn't say anything racist? I mean, again, the convoluted nature of their ideas to try to somehow manufacture some kind of illusion of racism from Piers Morgan and in turn from Sharon Osbourne here is unbelievable. It's what we call mental gymnastics, right? They're going through all these mental gymnastics to make it look like somehow they have a good point. But it really all boils down to one simple thing. Was anything that Piers Morgan said remotely racist? And not just here, any time in his entire life. And the answer, as far as I'm able to find, is no. He's never said anything remotely racist his entire life, as far as I can tell. And so this whole stupid idea is based on a lie, and Sharon Osbourne recognizes that, and she's being called not anti-racist because she doesn't agree with them that what Piers Morgan said was racist, because it absolutely wasn't. But none of them are really tackling that specific question because they know they can't win that argument, so they give all these convoluted nonsense answers. Let's keep watching.
I mean, there's something called unconscious bias, right? I don't think that everybody who is actually racist knows they're racist. I don't think that everyone who does things from a place of unconscious bias, that's called unconscious bias for a reason. Yes. You're not aware of it. So when somebody else is saying to you, hey, the things that you're saying are racist, they're harmful, they hurt me, I think that there is, especially now, I hope that folks can take a beat and stop and listen and really reflect on why they're saying that.
This is the most vicious, despicable lie that has come out of the left in quite a long time. It's this concept of unconscious bias. It's absurd. Because the whole concept of racism, is having a conscious bias, right? It's saying that this race is inferior to this race or this race is superior to that race, right? People of this race are inferior merely because of their race, right? That is it. That's it. Any kind of unconscious bias that a person might have, that's not racism. And this idea that you can tell me what my unconscious biases are, it's ridiculous. Like, you can never tell if you're racist, but I can tell you if you're racist. And if you don't believe me, that means you're even more racist because you're not accepting what I'm telling you is true, and I'm a black person, right? It's ridiculous, right? If you're a woman, you have essentially authority to claim anybody is a misogynist, and they have to accept it, or else they're even more misogynist. If you're a black person, you can claim anybody is a racist, and they have to accept it, or they're even more of a racist, right? That's the whole game of unconscious bias. Does anyone actually believe in this unconscious bias BS game? No, I don't think anyone actually believes it. It's a total con. It's a total lie. Look, listen, everybody. If you don't believe that you're a racist, you're not a racist. And even if you think you're a racist, you probably aren't. And I'll tell you why you probably aren't. Because I've actually had people tell me that they think they're racist. And when I ask them why, white people, when I ask them why, they said, well, I think that, like, you know, gangbanger type black guys, I think they're scary. And I said, right, but if you saw a black guy in like a nice suit, like going to work in his Wall Street job, would you be afraid of him? And they say, no. And I say, well, if you saw a white guy dressed up as a gangbanger, all tatted up, you know, scary as hell, you know, with a gun or a pit bull or a knife or something like that. Nothing against pit bulls, but you get the picture. Would you be scared of him? And they say, yeah, probably. And I say, okay, well, then you're not really a racist. You're a clothesist. You know, you're afraid of certain kinds of fashion, right? You're afraid of certain people who dress in a certain way. And the truth is, there are certain people who try to dress in a way that is intimidating, right? And maybe that's a mixed martial artist, you know, a white guy. Maybe that's a guy in like an Asian gang. Maybe it's a Hispanic guy from, MS-13. Maybe it's a black guy. There's anybody from any race can try to dress and walk and speak in a way that is intimidating. They don't have to be black, right? And anybody from any kind of culture can dress in a way that is inviting and friendly and disarming. They don't have to be white. They can be Asian, they can be Hispanic, and they can, believe it or not, be black. Black people can dress in a way that isn't intimidating. So anybody out there who has played with the thought, well, maybe I'm racist because I think black thugs are scary. Yeah. They're trying to be scary. That's the whole point of how they're dressing and speaking and acting. That's the whole point. All right. So if you're scared of a black thug, it's because they're trying to scare you. If you're afraid of a white thug, same thing. And if you're not afraid of a black guy in a three-piece suit, then, okay, I hate to say this, but you're not a racist. Right? This whole concept of unconscious bias is based on these BS ideas that people walk to the other side of the street when a black person crosses by them on the sidewalk. Well, most of the time that actually happens, it's because the black guy that happens to be walking beside them on the sidewalk happens to be dressed like a gangbanger. It's not just because he's black, all right? The guy in the three-piece suit, nobody's walking to the other side of the street because of him. But anyway, this unconscious bias stuff is just a way of tricking people into thinking they're racist when they actually aren't. God, I really hate that kind of crap. And the problem is, again, Sharon Osbourne doesn't have the tools to combat this particular point because I don't think that she's really had to deal with it before, at least not personally. And she's being personally attacked. She's caught off guard here, and it's difficult for her to respond. But let's see what she does say.
And
so if I like Piers and he's seen as racist, then I'm racist. Is that what you're saying?
It's not the case, but I think this is uncomfortable because no one wants to challenge a friend,
right,
especially on national television.
No, it's uncomfortable because you're wrong. You are totally wrong, and yet you continue to persist to try to make this case. You can't make it. There's nothing there. These kinds of arguments where you're trying to explain something that is totally false to somebody, but you're trying to explain it in a way that maybe sounds right so that you can fool people, yeah, it's always uncomfortable. It's always weird, unless you're really, really good at it, which you are not. So she's just explaining all this nonsense, explaining all this gobbledygook that basically just confuses people in an effort to sound right. It's pathetic, and it's sad, and it's weak. And she is a horrible person for doing it. And the other black woman, also horrible person for doing it. Not because they're black, but because they're calling people racist who are not racist.
No one wants to be the one to say the thing that's going to, offend a friend publicly. You want to stand with your friend. But when your friend is also, creating space for, or, not shunning, it's almost like a true friend's responsibility is to hold a friend accountable.
Yeah, they're all holding Sharon accountable because they're her true friends. Now, you guys are calling her a racist because you're crazy.
And I think people believe that you're not racist. I don't think you're racist. Just to say that super plainly, I don't think you're racist.
And this is the moment where Sharon Osbourne loses it. Why? Because every time a black person points to a white person and says, I don't think you're racist, what they're doing is they're accusing you of being a racist.
And I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden. I do not believe you are a racist.
Yeah. She wasn't calling him a racist at all.
I feel even like I'm about to be put in the electric chair because I have a friend who many people think is a racist, so that makes me a racist. And for me, at 68 years of age, to have to turn around and say, I ain't racist. What's it got to do with me? I'm okay? How can I be racist about anybody? How can I be racist about anybody or anything in my life? How can I?
Well,
what?
We will be right back.
What?
We have more topics, so don't go away.
And I think we should stop this.
Well, that got a little awkward there at the end, and I loved it. She's naturally frustrated because these women, you can't speak sense into somebody who is that irrational. There's no arguing with them, and she has to basically argue with them because that's the show she's on. And, she wants to stay on the show. She doesn't want to get canceled, and she knows it's coming. She can see it's coming. And there's nothing she can do to stop it because these people aren't rational, right? They really are like something out of 1984, out of Nazi Germany, out of fascist Italy, out of the Soviet Union, out of China, out of Cuba, just any of these countries where they would just kill political dissidents, not for any good reason, but just because you disagreed with them. All right, this is exactly what it is. So, all right, let's get back into it. This is going to be fun.
I will ask you again, Cheryl.
Yes.
I've been asking you during the break.
Right.
I'm asking you again.
Yes.
You tell me where you have heard him say, educate me. Tell me when you have heard him say racist things. Educate me. Tell me.
Now, this is great. Now, this is exactly what she should be doing consistently until the end of this whole segment. Unfortunately, I think this is the last time she mentions this. So she's mentioned it once already, They've gone through all this gobbledygook nonsense about white privilege and unconscious bias and blah, 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 blah. But they will not state affirmatively any evidence that they have to indicate that Piers Morgan is racist. He's ever said anything racist, that what he said was racist about Meghan Markle. She tries to give some kind of BS answer here again. And I would have hoped that Sharon Osbourne would have continued to push the point and said, you don't have any evidence. What you just said indicates to me that you have no actual evidence, no actual reason to believe that anything Piers Morgan has said is racist even a little bit. So you're only saying that because Meghan Markle is black, and if you criticize a black person that you like, then you have to be a racist. And she does actually mention that next, and we'll get into that. But they never provide a good answer, but she stops pushing the point. She just lets them basically railroad her with gobbledygook, and it's terrible. And I think that anybody rational can see what they're doing, and that's one of the reasons I want to make this video, is just to show how the left can win by just talking nonsense. If you talk enough nonsense and you say things that are so confusing because they don't make any sense, you can actually win a debate. It's terrible, but it happens, and it's happening here. Let's watch.
It is not the exact words of racism. It's the implication and the reaction to it. To not want to address that because she is a black woman and to try to dismiss it or to make it seem less than what it is. That's what makes it racist.
Okay, so anytime you criticize a black woman, you have to say, but before I criticize her, we have to recognize she's a black woman and she's been through a lot of horrible things because she's black and she's endured all this racism and it's terrible. Now, I don't believe that she was actually suicidal when she was a princess. I mean, what the hell is she talking about? I mean, nothing that she just said makes any sense at all. You cannot criticize Meghan Markle because she has endured racism before by other people. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? What she's saying, okay, Piers Morgan has to acknowledge things about her that he hasn't acknowledged. I don't really understand why, if he doesn't believe that. Like, okay, I, for one, I'll go ahead, I'll stand up, I'll raise my hand, I'll stand up in the crowd alone, and I will say, I do not think Meghan Markle has ever endured any racism ever in her life, ever. I don't think she endured racism when she was in Hollywood. I don't think she endured racism when she was a princess. I don't think she's enduring racism now that she's left the royal family. I don't think she's ever endured any racism ever. I think people don't like Meghan Markle because she's annoying and she's horrible. I don't think anybody dislikes Meghan Markle because she's black. But that is the defense because they love Meghan Markle and they know that it's an easy defense and that people will believe it and that they can basically criticize and cancel anybody who criticizes Meghan Markle ever. Let's keep watching.
I've never heard you utter anything racist,
Cheryl,
but I have felt that Piers was racist in his stance against Meghan Markle. And the last time he was on this show, I said as much. I said it when he was on this show.
And what was his answer to you?
He didn't feel that it was racist. He didn't feel that the racial statements that he was making were racist. But I was talking to him.
Okay, answer me this one, okay? Because I don't know. I don't understand. If he doesn't like someone, and I think this is for everybody who is born white, if Piers doesn't like someone and they happen to be black, does that make him a racist?
Perfect question. Perfect question. Beautiful moment. Probably the best moment in the show. That's the question that needed to be asked. And again, I say it just wasn't pushed enough. The problem is, even though I've heard Sharon Osbourne be pretty ruthless with people in the past, she's not ruthless with these women, and she needs to be. She needs to come out and say, okay, if it's not racist for somebody to criticize Meghan Markle, why is this even a problem? Okay? He didn't criticize her for being black. He never said anything about being black. So why is this even a problem? And then when they give another gobbledygook answer, she needs to say, this is not, what you just said is not a legitimate answer. What you just said is a bunch of convoluted nonsense that doesn't mean anything. You've got to explain yourself clearly and in a way that makes sense. What you've said is totally unclear and doesn't even make any sense. But she's not saying that, and so these women are getting away with it.
No.
That's a no.
No.
Right. So why can't it be he just doesn't like her? Why does it have to be racist?
Boom. the perfect follow-up question. But again, this is where things kind of fall apart, because she asks the perfect question. She then asks the perfect follow-up question. And here's where the nonsense comes in that she just lets slide. And I think it's probably because she's friends with them and she doesn't want to be too ruthless, but I would be.
Well, the weatherman who was bringing that to his attention is biracial, my understanding.
I know that.
And
I know that. I know the guy.
Right. And so, to me, I think where the racial and racist discussion comes in, it's the bias. The bias that's coming out of you to say, because there's a difference between bigotry, prejudice, and racism.
No, there isn't. What the hell is she talking about? Yeah, there's a difference between bigotry, whatever the other thing, prejudice, and racism. If the bigotry has nothing to do with race, but if the bigotry is race-related, or the prejudice is race-related, then isn't that what racism is? I don't know, what the hell is she talking about? God, these women will just... See, the reason she says this, there's a difference between bigotry and prejudice and racism. But she doesn't explain what those differences are, because what she's doing is she's trying to make it sound like she's smart, right? Let me educate you on something. This and this and this. But then she doesn't educate us because she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. She just made a very affirmative statement with nothing to back it up. It's just... these women are just so annoying. Somebody like her does not deserve to be on a show, right? Like this. Her opinion has very little value in this world. And the reason is because she's an idiot. Okay? What she's saying is complete nonsense. It's complete garbage. She's saying things to try to sound smart, but she isn't smart. The reason that somebody like her gets on a show like this is because she speaks confidently. But she has no actual substance to back up her confidence. It's like AOC. She's super confident about stuff that she knows nothing about. And it's really, really annoying. And she's following in the AOC tradition very boldly. All right, let's listen to some more of her nonsense.
And to speak upon something and not accept that what she is saying, what Meghan has been saying, it could be true. And the responses to that could be true. And the fact that you don't even want to take into consideration that her desire to want to end her own life is connected to her race. That dismissal makes it a racist situation. But I'm going to stop talking because there are more of us on this panel. Would you like to weigh in any way?
Okay, once again, she realizes what she's saying is total crap. And it doesn't answer Sharon Osbourne's question whatsoever. And she's just prattling on about nonsense to try to weasel her way out of it. And so she tries to pass the buck on to this other girl because she knows that what she's saying is ridiculous. Okay, so she's saying that because Meghan Markle's suicidal thoughts are connected to race, which Meghan Markle didn't say, actually. That's just an assumption on her part. Because somehow Piers Morgan didn't recognize that and then didn't believe that she was suicidal, and he should have because she's black, and therefore if a black woman says she's suicidal, it must necessarily be because of her race, and therefore Piers Morgan has to believe her or something like that. What she's saying is so insane. It's so unreasonable, so ridiculous that even she herself realizes it, and she has to then try to get help from the next person down the line. Like, but I've talked too much. Let's move on to you. Maybe you can explain it because I obviously can't. All right, let's see if this other girl can explain it.
Meghan and Harry had actual receipts, which is sometimes racism is so you don't have as clear evidence, right?
What do you mean by
well, I
receipts?
just want to finish. They told a really compelling story around the way that racism showed up for them in their experience, right? And Pierce's inclination, rather than acknowledging that racism, was to protect the royal family.
No, Piers Morgan just didn't believe them. He just didn't believe Meghan Markle. And he was specifically talking about her being depressed and suicidal and all that kind of stuff. Not about the race stuff, although maybe he didn't believe the race stuff either. I certainly don't believe the race stuff. I mean, maybe somebody in the royal family said something about the skin color of the kid, but talking about somebody's skin color isn't racist, okay? I mean, if you say, hey, thank goodness this kid's going to be a little bit darker than the rest of us because the rest of us sunburn like crazy. Everybody goes, yeah, it's true. He won't have to suffer through that like the rest of us. That's not racist. That's a good thing. They're saying something good, so who knows what the hell they said. She just said that they said something about the skin color of the baby. Just mentioning the skin color of the baby is not necessarily racist. But Oprah's reaction sure made it seem that way.
Concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
The whole argument that they're making is that because Piers Morgan didn't assume that every single thing that Meghan Markle said in that interview was absolutely true, and because Meghan Markle is part black, everything she said must be believed instantly. I mean, it's just the same point made over and over and over again by these women, and it's completely an irrational point. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You have to believe Meghan Markle, everything that she says all the time, because she's a black woman, and everything she said is tied to her race, and therefore if you don't believe her, you must be a racist. None of that stuff is sensible. It's all completely irrational. It's like saying, because you like to read books, you must hate eating cereal. No, because you like reading books has nothing to do with your taste in cereal. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? Because Meghan Markle is black, everything she says must be believed. No, that's not true, right? And therefore, if you don't believe some of the things that she says, even if they're completely not about race at all, you must be a racist. No, that's also not true. Everything about the line of logic that they're trying to draw here, every single cause and effect, every single idea that they have about this along the way is all nonsensical. None of it makes any sense. It's all completely irrational and stupid, and they're stupid people. Let's keep watching.
If he could say, you're right, that if that happened, that was terribly racist. And I have seen these headlines, and I acknowledge that there is racism at play here. If he did that, I think that you're entitled to the rest of your opinions, but when you bypass her experience, you don't acknowledge that experience of racism, you are distracting with all of this other information about being a royalist. And I don't know much about, I truly am so ignorant.
I'll agree with that. The first sensible thing she said this entire segment. You can see how it's just blah, 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 trying to talk themselves into this idea that, what they're saying is right, or trying to talk themselves out of this idea that what they're saying is completely ridiculous and wrong. The sad thing about all this is that there's so many people who are going to side with these women and who are going to hate Sharon Osbourne. I mean, I've looked online about, watching some videos about people talking about Sharon Osbourne, like Wendy Williams and stuff, and these people now hate Sharon Osbourne. They now calling her a racist. They're calling her to be canceled and be fired from the show. I mean, it's ridiculous. The people are just making this assumption now that Sharon Osbourne is this horrible racist and they all hate her. It's just so stupid. I mean, everything about this is idiotic. People are going to believe her, these black women. They're not going to believe Sharon Osbourne. They're going to accept what these women have to say, and Sharon Osbourne will be fired. I'm pretty sure. I can't see any way around it, given the toxic, leftist insanity that we live in today. Let's keep watching.
When I hear royalist, it almost sounds to me like it's almost the same thing as people who celebrate pre-Civil War culture, like antebellum, the old ways of doing things, where anything that came along with that culture is almost sacred.
What the hell is she talking about? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not from the South. I don't really know much about this kind of thing. It's the first I've ever heard of anything like this. Anything to do with the antebellum South is sacred. Are there people out there who think that? I'm not sure that's true. I've never even heard of that. I've never even heard of people. I know that people like the movie Gone with the Wind. I know that people like, the Old South and some of the cultural things about the Old South, but almost everyone condemns slavery. There's I don't know of any, I think even racists condemn slavery. I mean, slavery is one of those things that America thinks is like the most evil thing in the world, right? And part of the antebellum South was slavery, the slave state, right? Part of the old pre-Civil War South was the concept that slavery was an acceptable thing to do, right? So she's saying that there are people in America who idolize or romanticize the antebellum South to such a degree that they think that everything about it is sacred, which would include slavery. So there are people who think of slavery as a sacred institution that we cannot denigrate. What the hell is she talking about? I mean, honestly, some people in America seriously live in a delusional version of reality. They live in this alternative reality where there's all these white supremacists. Like, I assume she must mean people like me, right? I voted for Trump. I like Trump. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm a conservative Republican. I'm a white Christian male, right? So she must think that I hold those views. Listen, girl in the pink shirt, I don't know what your name is, but I don't hold those views, right? And the fact that you think that I do, and the fact that you're claiming on national television that there are people out there that do think those things, which I don't, if there are people that think like that, there's probably like 6 of them in the country, right? But the fact that you're equating royalists to people who think that the institution of slavery is a sacred one that can't be criticized, mind blown. Okay, I every time I think that Democrats can't get more delusional and ridiculous, I see something like this. All right, well, after this, they just, the conversation peters out, and then they cut to commercial. They basically end with saying that the Queen should have done more to defend Meghan Markle against the press. That's their conclusion. Here's the problem. Like, the media in Britain, I don't know how nice they are to the Queen. I don't know how nice they are to the royal family in general. I know that there are often articles on criticizing the royal family. I know that there are celebrities who criticize the royal family. In general, the British people support the royal family. They like the royal family. So I know it's kind of an unpopular position to hold, to dislike them or to say anything negative about the Queen. But they certainly endure criticism. They always have done. And you will get certain royals who will, for some short amount of time, be targeted severely by the media. This happens fairly often. I think the Queen has seen this happen many, many times in her lifetime. And so when this happens, I think that she says, well, you just suffer through it and you just wait for it to pass. I think that's probably how she thinks of it. I don't think that she thinks, oh, you know what? Somebody's going after Meghan Markle. We need to fight back. I don't think that Americans in particular are really aware of the kind of vitriol and criticism that the royal family has gotten over the years. I mean, there was just a show on Netflix called The Crown in which they were relentlessly vicious, especially of the male royals, especially of all the men in the royal family, viciously critical. I mean, it was a deeply sexist show against men. It was terrible. It was terrible. A lot of projects coming out of Britain are very feminist in nature. But anyway, yeah, so I don't know if it was on the Queen, like it was the Queen's responsibility to come in and, tell the media, hey, don't say anything negative about Meghan Markle. She's off limits. Why? Because she's black? No, Meghan Markle is not off limits. She is not so amazing that she is beyond all criticism. Meghan Markle should be criticized for some of the stuff that she's done. She is not... I don't think she has been a very good wife. I don't think she's a particularly nice person. I think she's pretty annoying. And I think that when the media, in some instances, were criticizing her, I think probably some people in the royal family were like, good, they should be criticizing her. She's annoying. She's awful. She's a pain. There was a lot of instances when Meghan Markle was shown to just not respect British tradition. She just didn't seem to care about it. She didn't want to be a part of it, which is fine. You don't have to want to. But the thing about being married and the thing about being a good wife or a good husband is that you make sacrifices for the other person, right? You do things that sometimes you don't want to do in order to make the other person happy, right? Or the other person's family happy, for that matter. And she just had none of it. She just didn't want to be that person. She wanted to be this independent woman, and she just caused trouble for everybody. And now she's causing trouble for Piers Morgan and Sharon Osbourne. It's like a domino effect. I mean, I guess because I'm defending Sharon Osbourne here, I'm probably going to get canceled off of YouTube. Probably going to happen anyway, but it's actually amazing how few views I'm getting at the moment. These videos seem to only go out to my subscribers, and even then, only a small percentage of my subscribers, because I'm getting the lowest number of views that I've ever gotten basically since I made my Brains Behind AOC video. It's pretty depressing. But hopefully this video gets shared by some of you, and you guys appreciate it. Just another instance of a show very much like The View, this one called The Talk, with a bunch of irrational, crazy people. Now, these women aren't quite as crazy as Joy Behar, who is, I think, the queen of crazy, but they are nonetheless horrible people and super annoying. Sharon Osbourne, though, because of this whole crisis, I really didn't know all that much about Sharon Osbourne. I'd seen her on television a few times, but I didn't really know much about her. I now like her. I now like her because of all of this. So, Sharon Osbourne, you now have a fan because of all of this. I hope you don't get canceled, but I don't see anything stopping it. Anyway, what do you guys think? Mention in the comments if you think that Sharon Osbourne's going to be canceled. I mean, maybe she'll be canceled by the time this goes out. I don't know, but let me know if you think that she deserves to stay on television or if she's such a horrible racist person for defending Piers Morgan. God, it's amazing how these stupid things get out of hand. It really is like children fighting over a piece of candy. I mean, it's just the most childish, infantile bullcrap. Don't ever criticize Meghan Markle. How dare you? You're canceled. You're a racist. It's ridiculous. All right. Thanks for watching this, you guys. I hope you enjoyed watching me be disgusted by the ladies of the talk. Maybe I'll do more of these. Probably not, but maybe I'll do another one about The View soon. So stay tuned. All right, well, that's it for me. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much that is not so. Good night.
We have so many people who can't see a fat man standing beside a thin one without coming to the conclusion the fat man got that way by taking advantage of the thin one.
Mr. President, in talking about the continuing recession tonight, you have blamed mistakes of the past, and you have blamed the Congress. Does any of the blame belong to you?
Yes, because for many years I was a Democrat.